New developments tonight in the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, more than 4 months after she disappeared from her Tucson home. Volunteers in Mexico say they received a tip about where her remains could be. 12 News reporter Maria Stobbs is here with the latest. Maria?
Mark, that's right. This search group regularly looks for missing people, and they've helped find the remains of dozens of people in the Nogales area. But this is the first time they've received a tip that specifically mentioned Nancy Guthrie. For the volunteers with Buscando Corazones, anonymous tips are common, often leading them to remote parts of Mexico as they search for missing people.
We usually get anonymous calls almost every day.
This time, they're looking for answers in a case that has captured national attention. Were you familiar with Nancy Guthrie when you did get that tip?
In reality, no, I didn't know. Once they told me, I looked her up. That's all I know. Here in Mexico, we search for all those who are missing the same way.
Ramona Guadalupe Ayala Ortiz, the leader of the collective, says a caller last month told her Nancy Guthrie's remains are buried close to the Mariposa port of entry in Nogales, just across the border. Nancy, the mother of Today co-host Savannah Guthrie, has been missing since February 1st after police say she was taken from her Tucson home. Savannah Guthrie has since returned to work, but the pain remains.
It's always with me, you know. I cry every morning on the way to work, and I cry every morning on the way home.
Despite video showing a masked man at Nancy's home the night she disappeared, there are still no answers or suspects.
A search that had already stretched across months has now crossed an international border, adding a dramatic new chapter to one of the most heartbreaking missing persons cases in recent memory. More than 4 months after 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Tucson home without a trace, a new lead has emerged from Mexico, raising fresh questions and renewing hopes that investigators and volunteers may finally uncover what happened. While the latest development has yet to produce concrete answers, it has reignited efforts on both sides of the border and drawn renewed attention to a case that continues to weigh heavily on family members, investigators, and supporters who refuse to give up. Before we continue, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you can receive first-hand updates on this story and others as new developments emerge. The latest search efforts began after a volunteer organization in Mexico received an anonymous tip that specifically mentioned Nancy Guthrie by name. For a case that has already generated significant national attention, the information immediately stood out. The organization, known for helping locate missing persons in the Nogales region, routinely receives anonymous calls from people claiming to have information about potential burial sites or locations connected to missing individuals. Many of those tips lead search teams into remote areas where they spend hours carefully examining the landscape for evidence. What made this situation different was that the caller did not simply report suspicious activity or describe an unidentified victim. Instead, the tip allegedly referred directly to Nancy Guthrie. That detail immediately elevated the significance of the information and prompted volunteers to take the report seriously. The volunteer group has built its reputation through years of searching for missing people throughout the border region. The area surrounding Nogales has long presented challenges for families seeking answers about loved ones who disappear. Rugged terrain, isolated locations, and the vast distance that search teams must cover make investigations extremely difficult. Despite those obstacles, volunteer search groups have become an important resource for families, often working alongside authorities or pursuing leads that otherwise might go unexplored. Members of these organizations frequently travel to remote locations based on anonymous information. Their work can be physically demanding and emotionally draining. Searchers spend countless hours walking through difficult terrain, studying the ground for subtle signs that may indicate a hidden burial site or evidence connected to a missing person. Over the years, their efforts have helped recover the remains of numerous individuals, providing answers to families who had spent years wondering what happened to their loved ones. Interestingly, the leader of the search collective, Ramona Guadalupe Ayala Ortiz, reportedly had little knowledge of Nancy Guthrie before receiving the tip. Unlike many Americans who became familiar with the case because of Nancy's connection to her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, Ramona said she was not initially aware of who Nancy was. After hearing the information, she researched the case to better understand why the name sounded familiar and why the tip might be important. Her response highlights an important aspect of the group's mission. The volunteers do not prioritize cases based on public attention or media coverage. Instead, they approach each missing person investigation with the same sense of purpose. Whether a case receives national headlines or remains largely unknown, Their objective remains unchanged: find answers for families searching for loved ones. According to the information received by the group, the caller claimed Nancy Guthrie's remains could be buried near the Mariposa port of entry in Nogales, just across the border from Arizona. The location described in the tip reportedly included a stream area and a nearby tree that could serve as a landmark. While the information was limited, it provided enough detail for volunteers to organize a search. The suggestion that the case may extend into Mexico represents a significant development. Until now, much of the public focus had remained centered on Tucson and surrounding areas in Arizona. A lead pointing across the border potentially expands the scope of the investigation and introduces new possibilities regarding what may have occurred after Nancy disappeared. Nancy Guthrie was reported missing after vanishing from her Tucson home on February 1. Since that day, investigators have worked to determine exactly what happened. The disappearance quickly generated national interest due to Nancy's connection to Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. Yet beyond the headlines and public attention lies a deeply personal tragedy involving a family searching for answers. The circumstances surrounding Nancy's disappearance have remained troubling from the beginning. Investigators have indicated that she was taken from her residence, transforming the case from a missing person investigation into something far more alarming. Despite months of work, authorities have not publicly identified suspects or provided definitive explanations regarding what occurred. One of the most unsettling aspects of the investigation involves surveillance footage that reportedly showed a masked individual at Nancy's home around the time she disappeared. The image immediately intensified concerns and fueled speculation about who might be responsible. However, despite the attention surrounding the footage, investigators have not announced any arrests or publicly identified the individual seen in the video. The lack of clear answers has been especially painful for Nancy's family. Throughout the investigation, Savannah Guthrie has spoken openly about the emotional toll of her mother's disappearance. Her comments have provided a glimpse into the daily reality faced by families of missing persons. Every passing day without answers brings new uncertainty, new questions, and renewed grief. Savannah has continued her professional responsibilities while carrying the emotional burden of not knowing what happened to her mother. In public remarks, she has described the sadness and frustration that accompany such uncertainty. Like many families affected by similar tragedies, she has repeatedly expressed hope that someone with information will come forward and help investigators piece together the truth. That hope remains a driving force behind ongoing search efforts. After receiving the anonymous tip, volunteers joined Mexican authorities in conducting searches near the location described by the caller. Their work involved examining stream beds, studying soil conditions, and searching for signs that the ground may have been disturbed. Experienced searchers often rely on subtle indicators when looking for clandestine graves. Burn marks, unusual vegetation patterns, uneven terrain, and recently altered soil can all serve as clues. Volunteers are trained to recognize these signs and understand how natural environments change over time. Even so, locating evidence in remote areas is rarely straightforward. The first search reportedly took place in May, followed by another operation several weeks later. Despite careful examinations of the area, searchers found nothing that confirmed the anonymous claim. No remains were discovered, and no evidence publicly linked the location to Nancy Guthrie. While some might view the lack of results as discouraging, volunteers have not abandoned the effort. Instead, they are preparing to search additional locations in the area, including another stream that may fit the description provided by the caller. Their willingness to continue reflects a broader reality of missing persons investigations. Answers often emerge only after repeated searches and persistent follow-up. Meanwhile, authorities in Arizona remain actively involved in the investigation. The Pima County Sheriff's Office has acknowledged reports about the anonymous tip and the searches taking place in Mexico. However, officials have stated that they have not been contacted directly by Mexican authorities regarding those efforts. Even so, investigators emphasize that the case remains active and ongoing. The situation illustrates the complexity of modern investigations that cross international boundaries. Cooperation between agencies, verification of information, and careful evaluation of leads all take time. Every tip must be assessed, regardless of whether it ultimately proves credible. Investigators cannot afford to ignore potential information, particularly in a case where so many questions remain unanswered. At this stage, the anonymous tip has produced more questions than answers. No evidence has confirmed the caller's claims, and search teams have yet to find anything connecting the reported location to Nancy Guthrie. Nevertheless, The lead has expanded the search area and provided investigators and volunteers with another avenue to explore. As the months continue to pass, one reality remains unchanged: a family is still waiting for answers. Volunteers continue searching. Investigators continue following leads. Supporters continue sharing information and hoping for a breakthrough. And somewhere within this complex investigation may be the key piece of evidence that finally explains what happened. For now, hope remains stronger than certainty. The searches in Mexico have not delivered the outcome many were hoping for, but they have also not closed the door on the possibility of future discoveries. Every new lead carries the potential to move the investigation forward, even when immediate results are not apparent. The most important takeaway from this latest development is that the search for Nancy Guthrie is far from over. An anonymous tip has pushed the investigation beyond the United States border. Dedicated volunteers and authorities continue working despite setbacks. Family members remain determined to find answers. Investigators are still pursuing every credible lead. And as new search efforts prepare to move forward, many are holding on to the hope that one day the mystery surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance will finally be solved, bringing long-awaited answers to those who have spent months living with uncertainty and heartbreak.